Good evening and welcome to the Monomoy Regional School Committee meeting. Today is Thursday, February 13th, 2025. This meeting will be broadcast to Channel 22 as well as live streamed and recorded to the MRSC YouTube channel. In accordance with MGL C71, Section 38N, this is a public hearing for the proposed annual budget for the fiscal year 2026. The purpose of the public hearing is to present the fiscal year 26 Monomoy Regional School District budget to the community for their input. I'd like to call the meeting to order at 6:01. We'll start with the fiscal year 26 budget presentation.
All right, good evening, school committee and members of the public here. So this evening, I'm going to give an overview of where we've got to with the FY26 draft budget. So it has changed a little since we previously presented it to school committee. And this represents a number of different things that have happened. But what I'm going to present tonight is kind of the whole overview of the budget, since this is more the public hearing. So this budget has been put together with the background of the end of federal funding, which happened it's happened in the last couple of years. The high inflation, which is driving up costs, which drove up costs, and although we have seen inflation come down, prices haven't come down, so we still see those high prices. And the increased need and the cost of providing those needs meeting those needs of our students. So a wider array of needs of students, and it's more costly to meet those needs. And that's happening across the country. And at the same time, here on the Cape, we are seeing the challenges of a tightening labour market, which is driving up the cost of recruiting and retaining staff. So you'll see the effects of all of those issues making their way into our budget. And so the summary really is right now the draft budget, which has not yet been approved by school committee, is $47,702,461, an increase of 6.86%. And the assessment that produces is an assessment of an increase of just over 1.6 million for Harwich. That's a 5.4% increase, and an increase of a little over $900,000 for Chatham at 8.8%. So that's where we're at. So over the next few minutes, or maybe slightly longer, I'm going to start by giving an overview of actually the assessments, because that's kind of the punchline. So I'm going to start there with how we are funding the budget, and then I'll spend a little time on where the budget increases have come from. But if we start just looking at, there you go, that's the budget again. If we start by looking at that budget in context, so this slide, you'll have seen this slide from me before, and it is kind of a little small to see now, but we include all of the budgets since a district was formed. It goes back to 2013, and it shows in green increases, or in red actually decreases, there's only one of those, but increases, the percentage increases in the budget year to year since FY13. So you can see in this context that 6.86% is a significant increase, and it reflects the dynamics that I mentioned earlier. The only really bigger increase than that was way back in FY15 when it was almost 13%, and that's really from the high school debt. So that was the first major payments on the high school debt, and that's why they finished the construction of the project. And the first debt payments were made, and that saw a significant increase. So how this budget is funded. So the budget number that I showed you is made up of these numbers here. So we have state and other revenue, so we get from the state to help offset our budget. Regional transportation, that is a type of state revenue, but I just pulled it out here because it's a significant number this year. Excess and deficiency, and then we have the two assessments that I mentioned earlier. So state and other revenue, that is actually up slightly on what we thought it was going to be. So our Chapter 70 funding, which is the state's primary vehicle for supporting education, is a little higher than we thought it would be. So that's good. In there's also a interest on our investments, and that we increased that. So that was $200,000. We're up to $250,000 now. There's also Medicaid, which is up, and also charter tuition. So that's the tuition, that's reimbursement we get for the cost of sending students to charter schools. And that's actually gone down a little bit, and that was one of the numbers that was updated when we got the Chapter 70 numbers. But the net effect of that is an almost 7% increase, which is great. And given that slightly more than the percentage increase in the budget, that means the size of the assessments goes down slightly. Regional transportation is up in previous years, and that's kind of a fluke of the last couple of years where it was low last year and now it's sort of gone back to where it was, and so the net effect of that is a kind of significant increase. But year to year, I mean, across the, so the year to year increase is significant. I expect it will be back down to where it was last year, next year. So excess and deficiency, so that's the other big sort of ticket item. So excess and deficiency is essentially the money that we have left at the end of a year, and the state audits that, or we have it audited and submit that information to the state, and they certify our excess and deficiency. I have a slide on that in a moment, but we are allowed to draw on those funds to offset the budget, and each year, the last few years, we've used $800,000, but given the size of the increase in amount that's gone on this year, we've increased that to $1 million, or proposing to increase that to $1 million. And so the way it works is we take these three items, come off of our budget, and the rest gets split up between the towns using the formulas in the regional agreement. And then this is just a pie chart to show the kind of proportional parts of the funding for the budget. So you can see the Harwich assessment is by far the biggest chunk of that. But Chatham's a significant amount, as is the state and other funding. And just to look at that another way, so this is the sort of same information, but in a bar chart over since 2013, since the start of the district. So this grey box is the Harwich assessment, light blue is Chatham, this yellow line is excess and deficiency, and the dark blue block is our state funding, including, and then in this one, that includes transportation, which is why it's 8.2% this year. So that's a little difficult to see, so I've done this slide, which just kind of narrows in on the last 6 years, or including 26. And you can just see what the sort of trends we've seen over the last few years. So in 21 and 22, the Harwich assessment was going up, not by much because this was kind of in the midst of COVID, but it was still going up in Harwich, while it was actually going down in Chatham, and that was a virtue of a number of different numbers, which I'll show you in a minute. But it was also the way the regional agreement was solely focused really on foundation enrollment at that time. And the state funding was kind of where it normally is, around 6%. 2023 is the year that we introduced the changes to the regional agreement. So that's when each town became responsible for the funding of its own elementary school. So you see in that year, Harwich's assessment actually went down slightly, Chatham's went up almost 12%. And since then, it's not been so, the differences between the two towns has not been so clear. Each year, Harwich has been up 4 to, well, this year would be 5.5%. But Chatham's has actually gone up a significant amount as well. In the 2026 and 2025, the percentage increase, well, not the total number increase, but the percentage increase for Chatham will be higher than for Harwich. I'm going to come back onto the assessments in a moment, but I just wanted to come back to excess and deficiency. So what this chart shows you is each of these lines, this bar chart shows what our certified excess and deficiency has been at the end of each year, going back to 2014. The 7-1 is the year, is the date that it's certified. So you can see we have like a general, increase, which is good and healthy. And this orange line is 5% of our operating budget. And why I've included that is because under the law, we have to return any amount over 5% in our excess and deficiency back to the towns, and we return it by offsetting their assessment. So we have to return back to them at least that amount over the orange line. As it turns out, if we're using $1 million towards it, even 800,000, we're way over the minimum amount we have to return to the towns. But I think and as I say, the auditor has estimated our excess and deficiency for the end of 2014, FY14, at just around $2.5 million. And so if we use up $1 million of that, that takes us down to 1.5. Though, as with normally happens, we'll also add something back through the course of this year. I see a question.
Michael, using the $1 million of the excess and deficiency.
Yes.
Is there a previous slide that said that's 25% more than last year?
Yes, because it's $200,000 more than 800,000, so it's like a quarter increase. Yeah.
So we're increasing the amount of E&D we're using this year.
That's what we are proposing. Yeah.
It's the inner Nancy.
Yeah.
She's in there. Okay.
Yes. So, and then just, so my earlier point about the assessments have changed back in 2023. So what this chart, this table shows is the assessments as they currently are and what they would have been if we'd used the original methodology. And it's a difference of around $1.3 million would be more to Chatham than Harwich. To Chatham if we had maintained the old formula. So, I wonder, so what this chart shows is two things. So it's on the left is the town of Harwich, on the right is the town of Chatham. The blue line is the minimum local contribution, and I'll explain what that is in a moment. And in the orange line is the foundation enrolment. So the minimum local contribution is a number that's calculated by the state, and it's the first thing that is assessed to each town. So the state calculates the minimum amount each town must contribute to its education, in that town. And the way the regional agreement works is the first number assessed to each town is the minimum local contribution. So fluctuations in the minimum local contribution can have a big effect on the eventual assessments. And this year, it's hard to see on this chart, but the minimum local contribution, is based on three things really. It's foundation enrolment in that town, and foundation enrolment is all the students who live in that town that attend public school, even if they don't come to Monomoy. So that's foundation enrolment. And it also rely on the value of property in the town and an estimate of revenue into the town that the state makes. And so using those three numbers, they come up with what they believe this town should be contributing towards education. So a big part of that is foundation enrolment. And as you can see here, you might not be able to see, but here you can see Harwich's enrolment goes down ever so slightly. I think it's down by 4 or 5. Whereas Chatham's goes up ever so slightly. The delta is 9. And although both minimum local contributions go up, Chatham's, as a percentage of Chatham's, it goes up slightly more than Harwich. And so, although they're not big changes, because everything's relative, and we're really just talking about how we split up the increase, and because everything's relative, that can have a sort of significant impact on the eventual split. And really those changes are a lot about what's driving the increase in Chatham's assessment and why that's gone up more than Harwich in percentage terms. All right, so that's the assessments and the revenue that offset the assessments. Now I wanted to turn our focus to what's driving expenditure and what's driving our budget proposal. So this chart is, again, a pie chart, just to give you a sense of how our expenditure, how our budget is broken down by major account. The major account is just a category that the state gives to us, and it's in the state's chart of account, and it's just a nice way to have a consistent categorization of our funding. So unsurprisingly, you can see teachers, class really taking up 31% of our budget, plus benefits and fixed charges for all staff, and that's almost half our budget. So just decisions there alone are impacting the budget. And given what I mentioned earlier about how it's getting more expensive to recruit and retain staff, for example, with the new, now a year into our contracts, they were significant increases in order to keep competitive with the local job market. And so when there's increases there, that's increasing the overall budget. And in other areas where you see, so pupil services, that includes transportation, and we're seeing some increases there. Other teaching services, that includes instructional assistants and some other specialists. And something else we've talked about in previous meetings is that the needs of students are growing, and the type of needs that they have is expanding, and that's driving up costs in areas like other teaching services, instructional assistants, and so on. And I have, just to give you a sense of changes over time, so this is the split from FY16. So this is going back a while, so you can kind of see trends that have happened over longer time. So you can see, actually, teachers made up slightly more of the budget back 10 years ago, and partly that's because enrollment's gone down, so the need for classroom teachers has gone down slightly. Benefits and fixed charges was a smaller percentage. Other teaching services, which includes those instructional assistants, was smaller. programs with other school districts, that includes school choice. And so that's why that's gone down, because we're spending much less on school choice, so we have far fewer students choosing to attend other districts. So that's kind of the broad trends, but just to go through exactly what's driven the increase in the budget from FY25 to 26. So this is the same breakdown of same major accounts that we're breaking down here. You've got the FY25 budget and then the FY26 budget. This column is the difference between the two, and it's shaded depending on the change. So if it's green, it's a reduction, because I like reductions, and if it's red, it means the costs have gone up. And the intensity of the colour indicates the magnitude of the increase or decrease. So unsurprisingly, benefits and fixed charges are where we're seeing the biggest increases, and teachers, really, because those are our biggest categories. Although even as percentages, those are significant increases. Benefits and fixed charges, we're seeing a 6.5% increase in health insurance. So that's less than we thought. We had thought it was going to be 10%, but 6.5% is still a significant amount of money, and it's a big impact on our budget. And likewise, as I mentioned, with teachers. So what's driving this is there's a few things going into this number, but the column change, cost of living increases and steps of staff, but also column changes. Staff, particularly in teachers, can change columns, but also turnover. So in the past, turnover used to be a savings from us, but increasingly, because of the job market that we're in, when somebody leaves and they're often replaced with somebody who earns as much or higher. And so there's a few spots where it actually cost more when we've seen turnover rather than any savings. And that's all reflected in here. So anybody that's been hired since the FY25 budget was finalised, any increases there are all reflected in this number. I'll just run through other things to note. Acquisition, improvement and replacement of fixed assets, that's just in line with what our primary focus capital projects are for next year. I've got a list of those coming. And some depending on the definition, some of those projects are also included in operations and maintenance. And so you can see that has gone up a not insignificant amount. That also includes heating and electricity and utilities. We had taken account of some of the increases in utilities this year, so we're actually in a good place. So I don't think we're not seeing a huge increase there. I just wanted to highlight also pupil services. We are seeing a big increase in our transportation costs, and that is one thing that's changed since even the last time we presented the budget. We're seeing we have more placements out of district, and the cost of providing that transportation is increasingly expensive, partly because there's not a lot of providers and there's a lot of demand. So all the districts on the Cape and beyond are trying to find transportation, and so that drives up the costs of supply and demand. Faith in our office spends every day she's trying to find, getting quotes, trying to get the cheapest, but there's not a lot to choose from. So there's a couple more of these that we can go into. The last thing I want to highlight before we move on is debt and retirement service. So this is really service or retirement of debt. And why that might be going down, despite all the talk we have going on about the middle school right now, is because we already budgeted this year for improvements to the middle school in this restoration project. So we have $300,000 in that line already for first payment on debt around any sort of project we get out of the middle school. In addition to that, as you remember, we've refinanced the high school's debt, and so that's captured as savings, and it's so really that savings from the high school that's reflected in that $72,000 reduction. Any questions about any of that? And I know I'm rattling through it. So I just wanted to, with all that doom and gloom and all the, tough stuff that's going on, we are still focused on improving the teaching and learning in the district and the academics and wellness of our students, and that's driving a number of requests from our principals and administrative team for items to help improve the experience of students in our buildings. A couple I think it's worth highlighting here. There's a lot here. Some are small amounts, like $5,000, $7,000, although it all adds up. But a couple I would like to highlight. First is the new math curriculum. So this is math curriculum to be implemented in elementary schools, so that's materials and professional development to help deliver on that. We also have, as you'll see, not just professional development for that, but professional development in a number of areas. And that, again, that reflects that need that we have. Our student body needs greater support and has new needs and developing needs. And we want to make sure that our teachers have the skills and capabilities in order to be able to meet those needs. And so that's why we are investing so much in professional development at the moment. And then finally from this page, it's to highlight the staffing changes. And these changes are offset by reductions, which I'll come to in my next page. But we have two. One is for two groups, really. One is English language teacher at the high school, and then an English language teacher district-wide. So that really reflects, we've seen a significant increase in the number of students who needs English language support in the district, particularly at the high school this year, which is why we have this number here, but throughout the district, and that's why we have this district position. So really that position will do two things. It will help to provide some coordination around all the English language learning that's going on throughout the district, provide support for all teachers, but we'll also be able to go in targeted places to when we see increases or fluctuations in numbers again, that person will be able to go in and provide support where it's needed, because this often changes day to day and those students need help immediately, and this will allow us to do that. And then we also have down at the bottom here, you'll see these another two FTE, and that's for the preschool program at Chatham Elementary School. So you may remember that we've been talking about moving, so right now we have special education integrated preschool in both Chatham and Harwich. In light of the numbers of students that we're expecting next year being so much lower than this year, we'll be having one program entirely at Harwich for the integrated special education program at Harwich Elementary School. So that leaves us an opportunity to introduce a new pre-K program at the Chatham Elementary School. And that will be a language-rich preschool to meet the needs of the students that we're seeing who are out there, the children who are out there and would be coming to kindergarten the following year. And then those increases are offset by two changes. I should point out there was a couple of typos in this slide that I've changed. So this is slightly different from what's in front of you. This one's right. The bottom line was right, so it doesn't affect the budget. It was just a bad presentation. But so we have two things changing. One is we have a reduction of classroom teachers, one at Harwich Elementary School and one at the middle school, and this is based just in enrollment. So given the number of students we have, we believe we need one less class, and that allows us to reduce a position. This number includes, this is a pure estimate. We don't actually know which position it will be yet, because we have a long way to go till we get to that point. And so this is an estimate of what that position might be, plus their health insurance. And so that helps to offset the increase that I had in the previous page. In addition, with the changes of the preschool we talked about and the reducing numbers, we've got 2 FTE reduction here, and that also helps us to reduce costs. And this is a 0.5 increase from the previous presentation. So when we previously presented this to school committee, we had 1.5, but as we've got more information on the potential numbers, it's actually now down to just 2.0 FTE, reduction of 2.0 FTE. All right. Yeah. So this is what changed. So it used to say reduce 1.5 here, and this number was also wrong. But this was it's okay. So this is I'm just going too quick. That's the problem. But yeah, so this number. So the bottom line here is 411,004 FTE, and that's what's reflected in the budget. So no change there. We also have, so as I mentioned, we also have some projects going on in our buildings. We want to continue to replace carpet at Chatham and the middle school, and it will help air quality. The vehicle that we use for the facilities, that should say the high school. That's the high school, and that will also, it says high school there. The vehicle we have right now at the high school is no longer really roadworthy. We continue to contribute to our stabilization fund deposit, a stabilization fund. We put $50,000 every year into that, and that is available if we have any major capital needs in the middle of the year. So like, I don't even want to say, something terrible happens, and then we would be able to dip into that stabilisation fund rather than drawing on our budget. We are also hoping to replace the alarm system and exhaust fans at the middle school. And then the debt that I mentioned already, so that's the payment on the high school debt and the $300,000 for the middle school project, whatever that ends up looking like. And so these are just some other factors which are pushing on the budget, some of which I've spoken about in one guise or another. So property insurance. So our property insurance goes up around 10 to 15% every year. It's very disheartening. There's not a great deal we can do about it. We work with a broker and they try and get quotes, but they can't even get that many quotes. So we're really beholden to the market on this. Budget requests, which we talked about already, the staffing, health insurance is still $300,000. Building maintenance, so this is a subset of that operation and maintenance number we had earlier. But that has skyrocketed in the last few years. I think it's kind of leveling off. So we're still spending a lot. We're getting a lot of repairs done at the middle school, but we're not seeing quite the same significant increases that we saw in previous years. I mean, $80,000 is still not sniffed at, but it was not in the hundreds of thousands, which it was in the last few years. And then out-of-district tuition, which is a net increase of $309,000. And it's actually, the total increase is more than that, but as I'll talk about shortly, we're offsetting it with other funds that are helping keep the net impact out-of-district lower than it might otherwise be. And that's in this slide right here. So the way they operate, the way the regional agreement works is that we calculate the budget, and that is net of some types of revenue. So the budget number that you see includes reductions for grants, for school choice, for circuit breaker, which is another one, and that gives us our final budget number. We then have other revenue, which reduces the assessments, but right now this is the revenue that helps to reduce the overall budget. So what I've done here is I've broken it down for the last few years by the year, obviously, and then this source of revenue. So you can see it's kind of fluctuated. It fluctuated largely because we had so much money from ESSER, kind of in 23 and then even more in 24. When that went away from 24 to 25, we saw a reduction. But we've filled in some of that reduction from school choice. So we've increased our reliance on school choice by $200,000, which is almost as much as, well, is a portion of what we were using from ESSER. We are also increasing significantly our reliance on circuit breaker. So that's this number here. So circuit breaker is money reimbursement we get for the state for some special education costs. When special education costs go above a certain threshold, the state reimburses us for, it's supposed to be 75% of those costs. And the way it works is that we find out, normally what we do is the money we receive this year, we use to offset next year's budget. So we already know what we're getting this year, we use that to offset next year's budget. This year, and what we're proposing to do here is actually use what we're getting this year and some of what we're getting next year. And that's because we're seeing this big bump. So we're kind of dipping into some of our reserves there to help offset the increase in our special education budget. So that school choice is up, circuit breaker's up, and then also the IDEA grant is also increased. So we're using a significant portion of that to pay for transportation, and so that was partly us, Melissa and I, working to move funds around. So we were using IDEA for contract services for BCBA support, but we moved that and said hire the BCBA person, which is coming out of the general fund, and to offset the impact of that increase in cost, the IDEA grant is paying for more of our transportation, so there's a net effect of zero in the general fund. Well, it would have been had transportation not gone up, but the net effect of that BCBA change was minimised by using the IDEA grant to pay for more transportation costs. So this budget is a significant increase. We are dipping into some of our reserves to help offset it. And it just, as we look ahead, where do we think enrollment's going to go, and what are likely to be the pressures on our budget in future years? So right now, we're actually here, in FY25. So what this chart shows you is, back to FY16, the enrollment at the district by school. So yellow is the high school, grey is the middle school, orange is Harwich Elementary School, and blue is Chatham Elementary School. And and then these are our projections from FY26, so next year on. So right now we have said, well, this is actually October 1st, it has changed since in a little, but we had 739 students at the high school. So as you can see, that is the highest that we've ever had at the high school. So we've seen this bubble coming up through the elementary schools and middle school, and now they're getting to the high school, and that includes the reduction in school choice and just a bubble that was here. But at the same time, you can see that for all of these, this is the lowest number we've had at the middle school in the same time. So these students are going to replace those, and that's what's going to bring this down. So over the next few years, we see it going from 739 at the high school down to 620. So a fall of more than 100. So there are some assumptions there, but it is based on the students we know we have right now. There are some assumptions about how many will leave, how many will go to Upper Cape, how many more we might get back. But we definitely see a significant reduction there. Likewise, at the middle school, and that's made up of the students at the elementary schools, that is also looks like it's going to fall. In this chart, in our projections, the elementary schools are relatively stable, but that's partly because we just don't really know what's coming behind our pre-K. So we're kind of guesstimating based on birth rates and based on previous, but the previous numbers aren't a great rule indicator, and so this looks good, but I don't know if these numbers are going to reflect reality as we get further into those years. But given that so that's what we're coming in the next few years. So that's all I was going to cover the last slide. I just wanted to give you some comparison as to where Monomoy Regional School District, how it compares to other school districts. And this is just like a reality check, like a sense check. Are we in the right ballpark? Are we in the right place? Are we spending as much money as we should on our students? Are we spending too much? So unfortunately, I only have data from FY23. The state data from FY24 is not available yet. But what this shows you is each line represents a district in this state, and they are ordered. They are in order of the amount they spend per student, going from the lowest down here to number 398 all the way to the highest up here. So at I'm not sure what's going on in the lowest. Those will be the biggest districts, and these will be largely the smallest districts. But in between, you've got a sense of the increase. And Monomoy is right here. It's actually the red line, and it's also the arrow here. So that is 121st out of 398 districts. So we're lower than Nauset and higher than DY. We're a little bit higher than the state average. But that just gives you a sense of where we are now. And from what I'm seeing and from what I hear from other districts, our increase, especially when averaged with last year's increase, is not out of the ordinary. So I don't expect us to be making much change in where we stand compared to other districts in the next few years, based on last year's budget and this year's budget, 24, 25, and 26 actually. But the one thing, it's interesting. I think this is just of interest, but you have to bear in mind, it's not perfect, and you have to bear in mind that we have a different, we have different size from other districts. So for example, Nauset is only the middle and high school. So if we were to put the elementary schools in there, what difference that would make, or if we were to take our elementary schools out, what impact that might make. And also, on the Cape, we have a very specific job market, and that is driving up our per pupil costs for the same thing. But if you compare it to FY22, we were 114th, so a little higher, but broadly in the same ballpark. And then if going even further back, FY14, we were quite close to where we are now. The major change here is DY has kind of drifted past us, going lower in their per pupil relative to everybody else. But we look very close to where we are right now in comparison to the state. All right, and so that's kind of an overall summary of just trying to give you a sense of how the assessments break out, what's driving some of those budget increases and where we stand in comparison to other districts.
Anyone have any questions? Okay, thank you.
All right. So I do have one more, just before I go on, so just quickly, so what's coming next? So we will finalize it, so there is a slight adjustment still to be made or finalized on the foundation enrollment, just because it's slightly more complicated than it used to be. We now need the foundation enrollment broken down by grade, and I'm still just working on that with the state. So that also, we still may get more numbers from the state on what the state budget is. That's their Chapter 70 funding and other funding. So the state's still working through their budget. We often have to draw a line and just go with the numbers we have, but we'll update them if there are any updates there. We continue to be presented to the Chatham Select Board earlier this week and the Chatham FinCom today, and we will be presenting hopefully to the Harwich Select Board in the next few weeks. And their FinCom, we're on the FinCom on the 27th, 2 weeks tonight, we'll be at the FinCom before school committee. And then school committee sort of final vote on the budget is scheduled for March 13th. And then the last thing is, so tomorrow we will post all this information on the website, so we will publicly. We'll also send you and post on the website the detail. It's like some 600 pages of the budget, is every single account line and what makes up that and why there's been any changes, and another report just summarizing all that data by function.
Thanks.
All right.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from the public for Michael? All right. We do have public comment up next. Is anybody here for public comment? When you step to the podium, please provide your name and address. Thank you.
Charles Gruska, 6 T-Berry Ave, Harwich. First of all, many thanks and congratulations to the administration and the school committee for, again, an amazingly transparent budget process from the perspective of a member of the public. Again, that's highlighted by the starting of the process with the budget workshop, which enables the public, if they're interested, to hear directly from the principals and the directors on the needs of the various schools and defend and justify those needs, which is a process that doesn't take place in most school systems, fairly unique from my experience here in Monomoy, and greatly appreciated. I noted that with pleasure that all of the needs that were presented at the budget workshop are reflected in the budget presentation tonight by Mr. McMillan. The exceptions were, and they're fine from my perspective, at the budget workshop, the high school principal police presented a request for 2 additional FTE special education teachers to go with the co-teaching model that the high school wishes to transition to. And in the interim, I think the decision was made that it's more important to first start that with tremendous amount of professional development. And that's my experience, is that that model requires right attitude and a lot of professional development. And so the decision to wait a year and implement the staffing changes. So, but I'd ask the committee to anticipate next year those additions in the budget requests. I want you to know that the school council reviewed and discussed that, the high school council, and we're fine, makes sense to us. I ask that you take this budget forward. It does reflect the needs of the district, and I ask you to bring it forward to those of us in town to vote on it, knowing what the full needs of the district are, and take it to the town leaderships, knowing what the full needs of the district are. To the Monday, again, and I follow the Harwich Select Board again, very positive comments about the pride in the school system, the good thing that Monomoy has going, the desire to continue that. I know they have some concerns about the ability of the town financially to support that, especially with all of the capital needs that are going to be coming forth in the next few years, which will be putting pressure on the operating budget, which from my perspective as a former principal and teacher is where the rubber meets the road. Class sizes, teachers, materials, etc. There is one item that I noted, the placeholder for the middle school restoration project, which is in this budget. I'm among those within the community that have real concerns about the impact of the restoration project on future budgeting for the schools, as the school committee will have to deal with particularly pressure on the operating budget, unless there can be some changes or hoping for some changes in the funding formula. And on Monday, the Harwich Select Board voted to approach the Chatham Select Board to meet and discuss on that, and I hope there will be some very good and open discussions. Noting the assessment, the impacts of the assessment changes from FY23, you see that $1.5 million difference in transfer of responsibility from Harwich to Chatham. If not for that amendment, I believe that there would already be a fiscal crisis here in terms of looking at the operational budget, if that amount of funding was still on the plate for Harwich, which has gotten very close to its levy limit. And finally, just an observation from all the discussions on the integrated preschool. For some reason, it kicked in my OCD and cross of perfectionism to realize that we have a number of, at the elementary level, throughout the district, but I'm looking particularly at the elementary level, a number of programs, special education programs that the district is required to offer to service to both towns, the students of both towns who need those to fulfill their IEPs. With the new formula, the amended formula that we have, that responsibility falls entirely on the school, the elementary school where those programs are housed. So for next year, with the latest plan, Harwich will be picking up 100% of the cost of the integrated preschool program rather than having a divided split. I know in some years that kind of evens out, that half of the programs might be at the Chatham Elementary and half at the Harwich Elementary. But as one who has both taught and administered district special education programs, my model is that those programs are really a district responsibility. And what it is we have to service the needs of the students, but we may only have one building where that can occur. And so under the Monomoy formula, the total financial responsibility falls on the town whose building that happens to be housed in. So, and I already began to think about this when the plan was to have all the programs in Chatham. That would be unfair in my mind to Chatham. And so what would make more sense to me is that part of the district component of the budgeting formula, but the wording of the regional agreement works against that and would have to be tweaked. So I'm hopeful that if the towns do decide to go back to the table and get the school committee involved in doing something with the funding formula for the purpose of things like capital costs, transportation, et cetera, that perhaps that's something that could be brought to the table at the same time as to whether there needs to be some tweaking to bring a greater fairness, and I was thinking perfect fairness, so that the district shares the costs because they've got to do those programs for both. Please do not be intimidated by the numbers or the percentage increases. Only reduce this budget if you are absolutely convinced that there is something unnecessary in that budget, something wasteful, something that is not a good use of the taxpayers' money for the purpose of the best education for our students. The towns need to see that, and more than ever, the towns at this time need to see exactly what it costs to offer the students of the Monomoy district to maintain being one of the best quality educational program experiences that students can have. If you take costs out of that for any other reason except that you think those costs aren't worthwhile and they're wasted money, then if you're presenting a false picture to the towns of what it really costs to operate. And if they get into discussion, the two towns, about funding formula and how we share costs and all. It'll be very critical, at least to start with a point where this is what we need. And what was presented tonight is, as of tonight to me, this is what we need to support the school program for another year at Monomoy at the quality level that it has been operating. And appreciate the opportunity provided by the public hearing to share as an individual taxpayer my views and thoughts on that. Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you very much. Do we have anybody else for public comment?
Hi, Ryan Edwards again, Hillcrest Drive in Harwich, taxpayer Harwich, and also a parent of 3 young children. I was kind of thinking along the same lines in the gentleman in front of me. Well, first of all, I'll say I did send an email asking 9 very specific questions. I just want to thank Michael McMillan, Melissa McGuire for reaching out to me today. That was very helpful. I know you guys were, I'm sure, busy with all the last minute details, so I really appreciate you taking time out of your day. One of the questions I asked about was obviously the integrated preschool. I've spoken on that a number of times. I am a little concerned just that the historical trend of an average of 28 students, we're only putting in the budget for enough preschool programs for 21. I am a little concerned about that. At the same time that we are also leaving a placeholder in the budget for the brand new preschool program in Chatham. To me, you know, I think that we should leave both as placeholders, and then as we get closer and finalize the numbers, that it would make sense to reduce it at that point. And then, like I was getting to before, I was thinking along the same lines as the gentleman in front of me. So I did reach out and ask if there were any SWD intensive needs students from Chatham that were going to be in the IL program at HES for the 25-26 school year. And the response I got was that there were currently no preschool children from Chatham who will attend the IL program. And I was thinking along the same lines. There's no IL program in Chatham under that responsibility. I do think it's perfect timing with the Harwich Board of Selectmen starting to talk about the regional agreement again. I agree with the gentleman in front of me. Maybe all the special needs programs should be a part of the district budget, and then the regular classrooms at the elementary schools could be each of their own responsibilities. I also did ask about how the funding for the team chair that covers the Chatham Elementary School and the HES pre-K program was divided. I asked if it was funded 50% from the town of Chatham, 50% from the town of Harwich. The answer I received back was yes, the team chair position that covers CES and pre-K is split 50-50 between the two towns. So I did follow up with that. I did say if we were to believe that the enrollment numbers for the integrated preschool program that Melissa McGuire presented will hold true, showing a significant decline in enrollment of SWD students, is there a plan to drop the team chair position that covers CES and the HES pre-K program to a 0.6 FTE or a 0.8 FTE position? If Melissa McGuire's projected enrollment holds true, there will be roughly a 60% decline in SWD students in the integrated preschool program from the 24-25 school year to the 25-26 school year. And I said that if we are cutting, it's actually 2 FTE teacher positions due to declining enrollment, it only makes sense that the town of Harwich should contribute less to the team chair position that covers CES and HES pre-K program if the amount of work at HES is being reduced by roughly 60%. The response that I got back was no, at the moment there's no plan to reduce that pre-K team chair position. And then another question that I started thinking about just in terms of revenue, this was actually the first time I've read the regional agreement, and it had to do with the revenue that the district receives for the YMCA program at HES. And I asked whether those revenues go back into the district budget or if it goes to the Harwich Elementary School budget. The response I got was under the regional agreement, this type of revenue is used to offset the assessment of both towns. This revenue reduces the elementary school budgets and the district budget prior to assessment based on foundation enrollment. In the FY26 draft budget, 26.14 of this revenue offsets the Harwich Elementary School budget. So I'm actually going to talk to the Harwich Board of Selectmen as well. If we are hosting the YMCA program in the Harwich Elementary School, it doesn't make sense to me that we're only receiving 26% of the revenue. I understand there should be some sort of administrative fee. I'm sure there's contracts that the district has to provide with them, so I understand there's a cost to that. But to have it offset the entire budget doesn't make complete sense to me as a taxpayer, especially, I believe I can't remember if it was the last meeting or 2 meetings ago, when we were talking about if the preschool program, integrated preschool program went to Chatham, if you would have hosted that program at the Harwich Elementary School, and I believe you said, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that you were going to look at adding another YMCA classroom, or there wasn't room. I can't remember exactly off the top of my head. But if we're limited in size at the Harwich Elementary School because of the YMCA programs, it seems to me that we should at least get a bigger portion of that money. That's all I have. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Any other public speakers? No? Okay. What's that? Yeah. We're going to move on to the motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained. Okay, we will adjourn at 6:52 and we will take a 10-minute break.
All that.
Good evening and welcome back to the Monomoy Regional School Committee meeting. We'd like to call the meeting to order at 7:01. First item on our agenda is the approval of the minutes. Do we have any questions on the minutes?
So this is for the January 9th minutes. Under the Cape Cod Christian Academy vote, where I moved, I believe it was Ryan Clark who seconded, and I just want to make that correction. And other than that, unless anybody else has anything, I'll move to accept.
Okay.
So yes, so I'll move to accept the January 9th minutes with that edit.
Second.
Thank you.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Abstain?
Abstain.
Oppose? Okay. Motion passes. Next on the agenda is our public comment section, where speakers are limited to 3 minutes. Do we have anybody here for public comments at the school committee meeting?
Charles Kuska, 6 T-Berry Ave, Harwich. Just two things coming from the high school council related to items on the agenda. The committee tonight will be doing the second reading competency determination graduation requirement. The high school council reviewed that proposal, had some extensive discussion about it. We do not feel long range that what's on the table for now is a great long-range policy because of our concerns about grading, letter or numerical grading, how well that reflects the actual competencies that students have achieved when completing a course. But in the short term, because of the short window that is needed to act on, this would support this policy, knowing that we will be discussing it further and probably coming back to school committee, policy committee with some recommendations down the road. And secondly, the council heard very positive reports about the impact so far of the new restorative justice position and the impacts that that's having on the school environment and student behavior, the ability of the administrators to do a fuller range of their duties, and many other good positive things. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to reports and discussions. The 2025 NAFME Eastern Division Honors Ensemble Student Trip.
Good evening, Rose Richard, the high school music teacher. I'm here to ask your permission, your blessing, to take two awesome Monomoy Regional High School music students to the All Eastern Music Festival. The last time we had a student go was Rachel Barnes's daughter, who's now graduated from college. So these two, this is based on their high all-state scores that they received last year. Layla Holmes is a senior, Emery Hines is a junior. They hopefully will be traveling to Hartford, Connecticut. They will spend 3.5 days with other amazing music students from Maine down to Washington, D.C. And I told one of the members of the school committee meeting, in my 100 years of teaching, I can name two really great conductors that my students have had an opportunity to work with, and I was so excited to open up the information and find out that one of the two, Emery Hines, will get a chance to work with. And I was beside myself telling her, like, oh my God, you're gonna get to work with this guy. Life-altering, amazing experience for both girls.
Any questions? Mary?
How are the students paying for this trip, or is the school?
They are not. It came out of my budget. And the cost included the hotel, it includes everything for them.
Oh,
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah, which is great.
Any other questions? Fantastic. Yeah, I was going to say, it's not on the agenda to vote on tonight, so everyone will have a chance to review it, and we'll vote at the next meeting.
Okay, awesome. I'm going to make a quick shameless plug for Mamma Mia. I have paper invitations with all the things on it to whip around, and also the Tuesday that we come back from February vacation, our jazz band under the world's greatest volunteer, Wayne Noss, is going to the Massachusetts Jazz Educators Association Festival. We are going for a rating, so send us all of your good vibes for a gold. If they play like they played yesterday at rehearsal, I will be shocked if they don't have a gold. It's pretty awesome. We'll be there in our what's the right word, league, heat, something like that, with Boston Latin. Back in the day, it was the Lulu Jazz program. Ours is pretty Lulu if you haven't heard of it lately. And then we had 27 students participate in the All Cape Music Festival, and Emery Hines and Layla's brother will be participating in All State. Final concert on the stage at Boston Symphony Hall.
Oh, wow. Wow. That's
Man.
fantastic.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank
you. Next on the agenda is the fiscal year 26 budget hearing recap.
So I just have to give you those slides again. But what I just wanted to quickly, for the school committee, just highlight where the budget's changed since the last time you saw it, because there's a lot of numbers there that have changed. So it's actually $95,000 more than it was last time we presented, and that's really caused by a whole bunch of things. But the key ones are that the health insurance, which we had budgeted 10%, came down, so that was a benefit. At the same time, though, we had a number of things pushing up the budget. One was out-of-district special education placements. So we've had a couple more of those, which added a significant increase in the budget of over $500,000, offsetting that a reduction that we saw in health insurance. I also went through line by line the budget and trimmed everything everywhere we could, not cutting anything, but anywhere where we thought maybe we were slightly overestimating what costs might be, especially as we now are halfway through the year, so now it's not just relying on FY24's numbers, but where we're at with FY25, that helped to save some money. But we're also at the same time and pushing another way is transportation costs are up. Those are partly related to special education, number of placements increasing, but we're seeing the cost of special education increasing as well. So those are kind of the biggest things where that's caused the increase. So there's a whole lot of different things going on. So it's not, that's why when we got the health insurance number, it didn't just go down, because it's offset with these other increases. And that's the summary of special education, transportation. We also saw our Barnstable County retirement payments increased, and then some decreases, including a bunch of savings and other changes we were able to make, an increase in the offset from the IDA grant and the health insurance. And the additional 0.5 pre-K position that we were able to reduce. And then just so where that, I'll just finish with this because I know you have a lot to do today, but the state and other revenue is increased by $192,000, so that helps to offset the budget. Excess and deficiencies we discussed, we increased by 200, and Harwich assessment overall is reduced by 384, whereas the Chatham assessment increased by 87, and that comes back to that change in the minimum local contribution and the foundation enrollment, which is why we kind of had a different experience of all these changes. Yes.
Just a random question. What's the cherry sheet?
Sorry, that's because I'm going too quick, yeah. That's how much, so the cherry sheet is the state produces its figures with the Chapter 70 funding, our school choice costs, and our charter tuition, including what's particularly relevant to us is Chapter 70, school choice, charter tuition costs, and transportation. They're all on the cherry sheet. I guess way back when it used to be on paper, they printed them on slightly pink paper. That's how they called the cherry sheets.
I like the history. Thank you.
Self-named, or are you just?
No, not just me.
Yeah, it's been around
I've
for a
never
while.
seen that
I'm
in a
so sorry. Like, so
presentation.
it's because that includes both the school choice. They're just small adjustments, and I've thrown them out. I apologize.
So you
The
combine
school-
them.
the school
You just
choice
wanted us to
and the
ask a
charter
question.
tuition. Yeah.
I was like, no, that's the thing. She's like, no, it's Oak Street. I'm like, oh, that's the other one.
Anyway, sorry.
Okay, I'm glad you asked.
We digress.
So that was all. I just wanted to bring you, help make that connection between what you voted and what we've currently presented.
Any other questions? No, just about cherries. There was none? Oh, okay. So then,
So I guess that we don't really need a vote at this time, as long as you're content for us to continue sort of presenting this draft of the budget before your vote on March 13th.
okay. Sounds good.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Moving right along to the restorative justice update.
Good evening, everybody. Jen Police, Principal, Monomoy Regional High School, and my partner in crime, David Alexander, Assistant Principal for grades 10 through 12. We're here to give you guys a brief update about the Restorative Justice Coordinator position, which we developed late summer in an effort to develop some proactive and pro-social responses to student behavior. So, we're going to start with a video of Michael Turner, who is our Restorative Justice Coordinator. He's also a basketball coach, so he's unable to be here this evening, but he's put together a really interesting video, which I hope captures sort of a day in the life of what his role actually looks like in action. So enjoy, and then I'm going to give you some numbers, which Brad, I know you're really interested in seeing that. So.
Absolutely.
All right, let it roll. Thank you.
My name is Michael Turner, and I am the new Restorative Justice Coordinator here at Monomoy High School. Restorative justice is a non-traditional approach to discipline that focuses on repairing the harm done to the victim and allowing the offender to see how his or her actions have affected the victim or anyone else involved. In this process, we allow both the victim and the offender to sit down in a room together and discuss what happened, with me present to mediate. This is called a restorative circle. During this circle, students are allowed to speak freely, talk about the emotions that came up during the incident, and explain why they felt they needed to respond how they did. The students develop some sort of empathy for the other by seeing it from their perspective. In other words, they put themselves in the other student's shoes. This in turn hopefully prevents them from doing that harm again in the future. Restorative circles are just one of the many things I have been tasked with to take on in my new role. Another one of them being JOSM signups and attendance. JOSM is an hour-long block from 12 to 1 that is split up into A and B. Students are expected to sign up for all 6 days of the cycle during their day 1 advisory, so that they have a plan for one block and are in the CAF or team room eating for the
Buffering. It's called buffering.
I was really enjoying that.
Buffering, I think that's what it's called.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just thinking about
Maybe
it.
slide it back just a tick.
Students are expected to sign up for all 6 days of the cycle during their day 1 advisory, so that they have a plan for one block and are in the CAF or team room eating for the
Doesn't.
We're gonna make this work.
Try going forward a smidge.
Yeah.
Oh, and then there's that.
My name is Michael Turner, and put themselves in the other student's shoes. On in my new role. Another one of them being JOSM signups and attendance. JOSM is an hour-long block from 12 to 1 that is split up into A and B. Students are expected to sign up for all 6 days of the cycle during their day 1 advisory, so that they have a plan for one block and are in the CAF or team room eating for the other. However, the issue that was presented to me on day 1 of the job was that students were just not signing up and therefore wandering the halls, roaming around the school, and getting themselves into trouble. My first day I attacked this problem, there were close to 200 non-senior students who were not signed up at all. After numerous conversations with students explaining the importance of signing up, and conversations with staff making sure they are checking their advisory blocks and making sure students are signed up, I have now got that number down to roughly 20 to 30 kids each day, which is a decrease of about 80%. This in turn has made the halls much quieter, the classrooms a better learning environment, and allowed students who are struggling in their classes to meet up with teachers and discuss how they can improve their grade. The next item on my agenda was presence in the halls. There was an issue in the past of students being out of class for an extended period of time, and therefore missing out on a lot of learning. With my new role, when I'm not speaking to students in my office, I'm out in the halls, moving locations about 10 minutes, and making sure there are not students out for extended periods of time. If I happen to see a student more than once in the halls during a block, my usual protocol is to walk that student back to class and make sure they are not to leave the class for the rest of the block unless it is an emergency. Our number one priority is making sure students are in the classroom learning, so my presence in the hall has absolutely made students aware that wandering is no longer an option. Going back to the restorative circles, this tool has been extremely helpful getting out ahead of a lot of issues and making sure that if there is an issue between students, teachers, etc., that it can be handled right away by myself. So far, in the 5 months I've had this position, I've conducted around 30 to 40 different circles, talking about numerous different topics that range from bullying all the way to teacher to student conflict. These circles are extremely helpful in making sure an issue is dealt with right away and doesn't fester into something physical, which is probably why at this point in the school year, we have decreased fights by 90%, only one. Another aspect of my job is having a check-in, check-out with high-risk students, whether it's behavioral, social, emotional, or academic issues the students are struggling with. I have a list of about 30 to 40 students who at some point or another have had extended issues in the prior year. And the goal of these varies, but the overarching theme is that these students are aware I am a person they can come to with any issue at all. Another aspect of my position is working with an administrative team on issues that arise on a daily basis. I am usually the first person to see an incident as it shows up in Aspen, and depending on the severity of the situation, I either handle it myself or let one of the two assistant principals take the lead on it while I am there to offer my opinion. When it is a conflict between two students or staff, I almost always suggest a restorative circle. There are many more aspects to this job that I attend to on a daily basis, but overall, when people ask what I do, I tell them I solve problems, big and small. My role in the school has been to support the student body in whatever capacity they need, and I am extremely excited to continue in this role and make a positive impact on the school. Thank you.
Very nice.
So I would say that's pretty accurate. That's sort of a day in the life of Mr. Turner, but this is what it looks like, and this is where his role is actually captured in the numbers. And if everybody wants to kind of walk down memory lane, if you recall, we processed about 2,300 discipline referrals last school year. We've cut that down after the end of semester one by already 239 referrals. So we've dropped from obviously 878 to 639. I think, so one thing that I do want to point out, and you can see that Jocelyn is kind of a flat line, there's actually an increase, but if you recall what Michael said, so last year there were approximately 200 students that were not even captured because they weren't signing up. So now, we've actually gotten that number down to about 15 or 16 every cycle. So the fact that we're kind of flat there, yet everybody is scheduling, to me, is actually a decrease. Fights, like he said, we're down to 1. Disruptive behavior has dropped by 54. Cell phone violations, 14. Cutting class, 19. Defiant behavior, 13. Repeated suspensions, which I think is important, and you can talk a little bit about that, Dave, but that's also down. We're up by one additional drug-related violation, and vaping is up by 4. And like Michael said, the wandering is cut pretty significantly. What's that? And that's more students, yeah. That's a considerable drop. So, but if anybody has any questions, I think about, like specific infractions or what that might look like, I brought Dave along, and he can sort of talk a little bit about, I think, the impact that Michael has had on the assistant principal's roles too. So, yes, go ahead, Brad.
I mean, this is great, and a couple months ago when I was taking a tour of the school with you, I saw Michael and I got a chance to speak with him, and it was just, he just had so much energy and was so positive. This is just great how it's working so far. A couple of questions. Going to the repeated suspensions, how how much work is it, because he said that, Michael said that if there's repeat offenders, he continues working with them, and he would think that with repeated suspensions, that might particularly be referring to that, but, going down in, 75% decrease so far out of 4, and this, could be I would guess, most difficult, the most challenging. So how has that worked in going down and literally having, at least percentage-wise, 75% decrease?
So he's getting to the root of the problem. I think that's the answer to that question. And when you're able to have the time to have those restorative conversations, kids can actually explain, and I work with him closely, so the video is a good, I think, indication of what he's doing. That's not just a video, that's what it looks like, that's how effective he's been, because he's been everywhere. But the answer to your question is, I think best exemplified in the fight that occurred between two students, that had been simmering for some time and resulted in a fight. And for similar situations, he's the intervention before that simmering turns into a fight, and that's why the numbers have gone down. He's getting to the root cause, and that's usually the way it works with high school kids. You said something to me in October or last hockey season, and I didn't forget it, and now it's been, bubbling out in disruptive behaviors in class, whatever that might look like.
Great. The other is, you talked about he's sitting down, and if it's a student to student, what if it's student with teacher?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I actually did a formal observation of him doing that, and one of the things that I think was so nice to see was everybody trusting the process. The student felt heard, the teacher felt heard. There haven't been any, and that was an ongoing issue between the student and the teacher. There hasn't been anything that's happened since, and I think it was because he was able to sit down and walk them through the process and get to the root cause. And I think the more that happens as we phase this into step 2, which is training the staff, then people will be able to even do that for themselves, which just creates an overall more healthy climate, which I certainly have felt the impact of all these positive numbers. Is a really positive school climate, and we had one prior to that too. So,
one more question is, how often? So he has the student-to-student circle. How often has that had to be repeated?
To my knowledge, I would say if at all, it's probably a handful. And that's because he's out in the halls. That's not a walker he's pushing around, that's his desk. The amount of steps he takes.
He's
going to
need one. He gets his steps in.
He gets his steps in, and he's out and about. And I think once he's on the radar, he and I talk about the kids on the radar, we make sure if there is something that's happened or we feel like it's going to happen, we all have those desks, and when we're all out there, it's nice to see the kids kind of, oops, I shouldn't be wandering. They turn down the other hallway and go back to class. So I think that's a big part of why you don't see any repeats, because if he's not doing work with them in the sharpness room, he's out in the hallway, as you saw, fist bumping and checking in.
Yeah, no, I just, we remember when we were talking about this during the summer, and it's so great to see these results that are immediate.
I don't think it could have worked out, and knock on wood, I don't think it could have worked out any better, and I think kids, I came across a phrase a couple of weeks ago called anticipatory compliance, and I think that's what's going on here. They know they're going to see him or us, because the ripple effect is we have a little bit more time to do whatever we have to do, and the impact has been a lot less stuff going on in the halls that's leading to other things.
Hey, great, congratulations.
Thank you very much for supporting it.
Great information. I was really looking forward to this presentation. And again, I remember being in the conference room a while back, last year, and just kind of listening to all of you being like, we can't get to our job because we're doing this other very, very big, important job. So 3 things. 2 on the report out, just out of curiosity, the Jocelyn violations. You said, and he reported, there was about 200 that were unassigned, and we've gone down to 20 or 30. The Jocelyn violations, is that within the 20 to 30, or that just overall of the whole number, regardless of whether you were assigned or not, and a violation occurred during Jocelyn hour?
Do you want to answer that? So like typically the JOSM violation is like a cut. So if you don't attend what you're signed up to do,
Okay.
that's considered a cut.
So it could be the 20 to 30, that 16's out of that, or it could be someone who did sign up and then they just didn't show up.
Well, so in other words, 200-plus people weren't signing up. We didn't even know.
So they're not
Right.
even captured.
So they weren't
Because if you're
captured.
not signed up, you're not captured. So that 301 last year was out of, what, 500 students? So, but this 317 is out of 755.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, I was just trying to understand if the violation was within the remaining 20 that aren't assigned, or if what the violations of JOSM in fact are. Like, what
It's
are the...
typically a cut.
It's typically a cut.
Because
Okay,
we
perfect.
look at JOSM as those are classes that you're supposed to attend. So you sign up for it, if you don't attend, it's a cut, and it goes in as a JOSM violation. So that's typically what it is.
Second question. The only other two red numbers are, there's drug-related and vaping.
Yep.
And this information is important because we've now, you guys have broken it down into all the different categories. So is this something that we can look towards and coming up with a plan for those specific drug-related and vaping issues? I mean, they're definitely different than physical altercations and social-emotional issues. Well, they kind of coincide with that, but have we looked at that and
So-
kind of targeted?
I can answer that for you. So, and Dave can talk a little bit about this, but I think the increase, particularly in the vaping, is we've changed our policy. If you guys remember, we changed the search policy, which I think is resulting in us finding more, number one. Number two, you have a person dedicated to being visible in the hallways and the bathrooms all the time.
So things aren't getting worse, we're just figuring it out.
We're identifying it.
Yep, okay.
That's the reality.
That's a positive then.
Yep.
And then my last thing is, do you two feel, is this meeting your goal? Do you feel like you can now are you finding a little pocket of time that you didn't have? Like, did it create the pocket you were looking for? Or maybe not yet.
Mark.
Yeah, I
You
mean.
know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That there's always going to be something to fill it. It's the question of how we're using the time.
Yep.
Which is I don't want to call it the little stuff because it's important, but chasing down JOSM cuts is not the best use of our time. Handling a variety of complex issues that might require an investigation, the thoroughness of those investigations. Meetings with teachers. Of course, the evaluation process. Those are all little things that we're sprinkling the little bit of time that we've been able to dedicate to Michael. Of course, Michael's gone above and beyond that in terms of what he's doing and his impact, but it's definitely a big help.
Good to hear. Thank you.
I have two questions. Does he work, I think Stacy Yarnell's in charge of the peer mediators. Is there a connection with him now? I feel like
Stacy's his mentor.
Oh, perfect. So there's a connection. And my other question, I'm not sure if it's for you guys or if it's for one of the gentlemen, but is this is it a line item in our budget now, or is it
I believe so.
being paid for by a grant, or is it a figure out how we pay for it, or is it actually embedded? Because I feel like the change and the progress that has happened just in this short time, I feel like we need it in both of this falls.
The short answer is it's funded in out of school choice at the moment. So we have the revenue we receive from school choice. So eventually, there is, so we have, we receive, off the top of my head, I think it's like $1 million a year on school choice thereabouts. So that's one of the positions we're hoping to fund at that 1.5, I think, as we're funding.
Same with the middle school position?
Same with the middle school position, yeah.
Okay.
Those are added, and a bunch of other positions which we've been funding for years through school choice.
Okay. And we'll get middle school numbers at some point? Little
We can have middle school come and present too. We also have to keep in mind it's a little different focus at the middle school. In part, it's much smaller population.
Sure.
So it's not a unit A. It's different expectations on what the role is doing. So it's more of a helping the principal and assistant principal get and connect with students less on the sitting down and doing, running restorative justice circles.
Okay. Can I ask a question? Well, I don't know if Dr. Carpenter, I don't know if you can answer it, but why are our models different for each school? Because I feel like if we catch it in the middle school, start working in the middle school, there'll be less going toward high school.
I think it was more just financially, looking at it, that with the larger population, we want, the need was for a full-time Unit A role here. We also recognized that there needed to be some support at the middle school. So it's a Unit B position there, more of a support role versus what, a lot of what you're seeing that Michael was talking about when it came to that restorative circles is, I would say, very high school
I think it's
focused.
more developmentally appropriate for here.
But some of the other stuff that he's doing in the hallways, that's what's happening in the middle school.
Okay. So we will see some type of report on like how that's going, what that looks like.
We can have that come.
Because I think if, we're not seeing a change or embedment to the school and the students, we should change the model to something that's a little more structured and maybe a Unit A position. And that's definitely a conversation we should have, because at the high school level, it's the structure and how they have it set up is working. And I understand that obviously it's at a higher level for high school students and what they're needing. But I'm sure there's something out there that we can develop, or that's already developed, that will apply to middle school students. Because I do feel that it does start, elementary school, middle school, especially before they transition up here. It would help support the team that's already here in place. And it would also hold the kids accountable, like, oh yeah, this is what happened in middle school. Yeah, it's still gonna happen in high school. Like, there's still gonna be a person there. So, just in my opinion.
I just have a question on the student staff. So it appears that maybe the students are feeling safe enough to come and say, I've got a problem with this teacher, when the teacher may not even know that there's a problem. So does this model allow a student to feel comfortable?
Yeah, I think where it differs from what it perhaps looked like in the past, because those conversations in the past may have happened with us, but it sort of ended there, where we were giving the kids the tools to then go back and try again. But the closing the circle, closing the loop, where you actually have the two parties in the room, that wasn't happening. Like because of the time, because we're divided in too many ways. But now Michael, he's closing the loop with the teacher and the student. We were doing it without the teacher. It was like we would meet with the teacher and then meet with the student, but you're not getting them together.
Right.
So that's where we're kind of closing the circle. That's the point.
Okay.
Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Next up is our curriculum update mid-year report, and just so everyone knows, it is also the strategic plan update. Those are one and the same.
A twofer.
Exactly.
All right.
Good evening, everyone, and I know the agenda item was just said. I'm Robin Millen, the Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum, Instruction, and Assessment, but I thought I had good news for Ryan that we're combining two agenda items into one, so we'll give a curriculum update and also inside of that do a strategic plan update. Also, we will be answering some of the questions that came up at the last meeting that you had for us as well. So I am not here alone. I am here with a whole team. Kristen Callahan is with us. This is the first time you'll meet her. She is the STEM Director for grades 5 through 12. Lindsay Huber is here. You met her last year, but she had a different last name. And she is the ELA Humanities Director for 512. We also have guest appearances today. So we have Megan Smith. She's a kindergarten teacher at HES. Dr. Jen Kelly, who is the principal at CES. Emily Tuccio, who is grade 2 at CES. Una Melanson, who is grade 1 at HES. Cindy Gushy, who is the instructional assistant now at the middle school. We also have Doug Walsh, who is at the high school. We have Dustin Burns coming in from the Galapagos. No, I'm just kidding. He is in the Galapagos, but we have taped him, so he is coming in that way. And unfortunately, Leslie Botsford and Sarah had intended to be here, but they cannot be here, but they're here with spirit. I do have to say, though, none of what we're going to share tonight can be done without the entire education team at all the schools. But there are some very specific task force and committees that are running. And so we just wanted to highlight and give a sharp shout out to all those people that are doing this work. I mean, it takes an enormous amount of time, and if you read through here, some people are doing one, some people are doing two, some people are doing 3 different committees. And no matter what you do, it's time, it's effort, it's a lot of cognitive thinking, it's a lot of forward-thinking innovation, so we just want to give a sharp shout out to everybody that does help us with this program. I'm going to turn it over to my team, and we're going to start with our work rooted in MTSS.
Hi, everyone. Great to see you all. I'm going to start us off just to frame some of the work that we do as our curriculum team in conjunction with all of the schools across the district. And that work is really rooted in MTSS, which stands for Multi-Tiered Systems of Support. This work is sort of the big picture that we've been working with our principals and all of the administrators across the district on throughout their schools. And you'll see on the outside circle here, there are several drivers, and that's really sort of where our touch points come in. And I just want to talk about those drivers a little bit, and I brought notes so I didn't forget anything. So you'll see competency, leadership, and implementation drivers. Your implementation drivers really like within this MTSS system, those are, to make it effective, those are the things that we work with our district leaders. We regularly use together data across the district to help us evaluate our systems, our policies, all of the things that are happening within the district, and then sort of how do we respond when that data is looking really great or maybe not. Our competency and leadership drivers, that work involves building our educator capacity, working really closely with educators, and that's obviously to affect our student outcomes positively. And some of that work you'll see here within all of those drivers. Our touch points include the priority standards work that we've talked about before, teacher clarity, we'll talk a little bit more about that. Instructional coaching, we'll talk about. Professional development, we'll talk about. And I won't read all of them, but those basically are sort of our touch points within this MTSS system and sort of how we work with our teams, our teachers, to eventually impact our students. And I don't know if I have the next slide. Oh, this one's for Kristen.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to give you an overview on how we track our progress using our strategic plan action planning document. This tool really provides a guide for us in terms of our action items, while keeping us focused on those larger long-term vision. And so our framework is really rooted in 3 pillars: portrait of a graduate, academics and learning, and being and wellness. And those are really critical for the success of our students, our staff, and our community. The graphic here on this slide outlines our improvement cycle, and familiarizing yourself with the language we use to track our growth is going to be really important as you dive into this linked action planning document. Conceive, identifying a need, gathering information, and then setting a goal. Initiate is really moving from that idea to action. Implement, executing a plan, monitoring progress, and then using data to iterate and adjust. Sustain is really about embedding effective practices in our culture and really making sure we're continually improving. Just to keep in mind, this is a dynamic document that is regularly assessed and adjusted based on our successes or our challenges. And with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Lindsay, I believe, to talk about teacher clarity work.
All right. So, teacher clarity, we've talked a little bit about that last year, but it's more than just like a learning objective for students. It's really about those 3 questions at the bottom, making sure students understand what am I learning, and those are our learning intentions. Why am I learning it? Clarity and motivation. And then how will I know I've learned it? And that's the success criteria. So we wanted to show some examples of how we're working with our different teams across the district on teacher clarity to ensure that our students are able to answer those 3 questions in their learning. And we do have a couple of people who are going to speak on the elementary school first. We'll do so K to 5 mathematics.
Hello, Megan Smith. I am a kindergarten teacher at HES, and I am involved in the teacher clarity work that was done with Lisa Westman. We had her come in. We did do a day in the fall, but we had a really productive day recently, and I'm going to talk about the why, and my colleague will talk about the how what we achieved while we were there. Our work with Ms. Westman really ties beautifully to our HQIM curriculum work that we're going to be talking about in a moment. And I'm fortunate enough to be on both, so I can see the connection real nicely. Yeah, because I'm a math nerd, sorry. So as the district's working toward a cohesive math framework for grades K to 7 and higher, the why that we wanted to work with Lisa Westman is because each elementary school and the middle school were implementing the math curriculum in a somewhat disjointed way. A lot of that came up through the HQIM work that we did at the beginning of the process. And we were hearing that the upper grades were working with students who had been exposed to different math language, different expectations, and when they get into the middle and especially high school, when they're doing much higher levels of math, it's really important that they have those same foundational skills. So obviously we want to have the same information throughout the district. And so to provide those strong foundations from K up, we wanted to make sure that all of our standards are aligned and that everything is using the same language and expectations. So Dr. Melinda enlisted Ms. Westman to guide us in identifying and aligning our priority math standards. And I really appreciated working with her because she was very methodical, and she just walked us through step by step, and it really, as Emily will explain, the outcome was fantastic. She really broke it down for us, and I feel a lot better about the process. So she's going to tell you what happened.
Okay, hi everybody, Emily Tuccio, grade 2 in Chatham. So I agree with Megan. Our day with Lisa, I like curriculum, so it was like kind of freaking out about it. I loved it. So this year we've started kind of thinking in a backwards design mindset to curriculum, designing learning experiences for our students. Backwards design is a method for planning lessons or courses where you start with the end goal in mind, which was a big emphasis in our work with Lisa Westman. Instead of deciding what to teach first and then figuring out how to teach it, you would ask yourself, what do I want my students to be able to do or know by the end of the lesson or course? Once you know the end goal, you work backward to figure out what the steps and activities are to help the students reach that goal. So in simpler terms, it's like planning a road trip, really. Instead of picking your route and hoping you'll get there, you first decide where you want to go, and then you plan the best route to get there. So what we did with Lisa, we worked to identify the priority math standards to be taught at each grade level. These standards are the end of the year goal for what students should have learned over the course of that year, our end goal. Once that priority standard was established, we worked to design learning intentions. These learning intentions were specific skills that students are instructed on and then assessed on. And then we work to define the specific ways to identify how students would successfully apply what they're learning. So that was our work.
So you can see with K-5 mathematics, we're in that conceive stage. That work's really just begun. And Lisa Westman has worked with our elementary teams this year, but over the past 2 years, she's really been working with our middle school and high school teams. So that's why we're in a couple of different places with those groups. So at the high school, 8-12 science, they're in the initiate phase, and I believe we have a video from Mr. Burns, talking a little bit about that work that they've started this year.
Fellow members of the school committee.
Oh, that's as loud as it goes.
Round two.
Fellow members of the school committee, my name is Dustin Burns. If you don't know me, I am the science department instructional leader, and I've been asked to talk to you a little bit about what we've been doing this year in the science department. And I've been working with Kristen, our new curriculum director, to take a look at what we're doing in the science department and ensure that we are providing the best possible education for our students. It really is about what's best for students. So the first thing we did this year was to take a look at the standards and make sure that we are properly aligned with those standards. We've been doing a lot of curriculum work to ensure that. Our goal is to provide common experiences for students with teachers teaching the same subject, and also just improve collaboration amongst ourselves, and especially for those teachers that teach the same course, so that students have common experiences. So that's been one of our goals. Another one of our goals with those common experiences come common assessments. We're starting to think about how can we give common assessments in different classes so that teachers during PLC can come back and use those common assessment results as data to inform our instruction and also to help us improve our instructional practices to benefit the students. And so these are our primary goals for the year. We've made a lot of progress. We've really fostered a mentality of collaboration and thinking about what's best for students, using the data to improve our instructional practices, and I think we're off to a really good start, and I'm excited to share that with you. I would have liked to have been here in person, but I am currently on my way to the Galapagos with the trip that you approved, and thank you again for that.
So to sort of round that out, ELA, grades 5 through 12 are in the implement phase. You heard Dustin talk a little bit about how, once we have all of our alignment, our standards, our priority standards, our teacher clarity work, our scope and sequence work, now we can start bringing some of those things into our PLCs, taking a look at student data, talking about instruction, sharing strategies, what's working, what's not, and they can make adjustments in real time. So I'm going to show you an example of our 6th grade ELA team, some of the work that they've done. Ms. Botsford wanted me to relay that she's very sad she couldn't be here tonight, but she's prepping for wrist surgery, so she had to miss out. But she did give me permission to talk about some of her work, so I'll speak on her behalf. I'll just show you. Okay. Yeah, you can do that one first, that's fine. So you'll see at the top, there's a link to our priority standards. That's the work that began with Lisa Westman 2 years ago and that we sort of finalized last year. We moved into a creation of our scope and sequence, really mapping out where are those standards appearing in the units so that there's a common experience across the grade level. And then how are we assessing those standards? And those are our common assessments, which our teachers, they determine an appropriate time to administer, and they bring the results of that assessment to PLC, or if, in the middle school, sometimes they do it during their team time. And then they just look at the student data. It helps them inform their instruction. They can go back in real time, and this is sort of where the implementation piece, in particular with sixth grade this year, has been really successful. They're able to kind of update this doc as the year is going on to ensure that that alignment remains and that our sixth graders are having a common experience together. But if something's not working, they're not waiting until the end of the year to go back and say, I forgot what happened in Unit 1 because it was in September and a million things have happened since then. So this is sort of like our guiding document that's really helping propel that work forward, and they're able to make adjustments as they go. And they've already made a ton. If you look at the second document, so this is Ms. Botsford's sort of her, the corrections she's made in real time, and these are the things that they talk about, and when they revisit that scope and sequence, they can go back together and make the appropriate edits based on sort of what they've determined the need is. And that will change again next year because, as we know, our students, their needs are different every year, sometimes every unit. So this is just a really nice way to get them to keep thinking about that cyclical process. The work really continues, but now they have some clear, she calls it her playbook, some clear guidelines on what should be happening in those units. And that's the van on that. I think I also have the next slide, so I'll just keep going. So this here is just a little graphic we wanted to share about teacher clarity. John Hattie, who's an educational researcher, he synthesized like thousands of educational studies and really determined what the most effective practices were. Teacher clarity falls in that zone of desired effects, that blue zone there. Those are the things that, have the greatest impact on student learning. So that's why we really want to focus on teacher clarity and ensure that that was a big piece of the work that our teachers were doing. And that's K-12. Another piece of that you'll see has to do with teacher credibility and teacher and coaching. And so that's another piece that we're going to talk about next. And there are a couple other things with instruction that Robin, Kristen, and myself will continue with.
So I just want to go back. You have a slide in your packet that we have hidden in our presentation, but it is in your packet, and it is a link to the curriculum cycle that is proposed from 24 last year, I think, all the way to 2028. And that is also a working document, but it keeps us in a cycle to do this work, but it also helps you as a school committee understand that right now we're in a math high-quality instructional material and curricular cycle, so that's why you're seeing that cost center in the budget. So that is a nice document for you guys to keep an eye on so that you know, like, next year we're going to be doing science and ELA, so you'll be hearing, again, I always say when I walk in a room, I cost time and money, but there you go. So going back to the strategic plan, we obviously have those three goals that were spoken about before, the portrait of the graduate implementation, the being and wellness goals, and then the learning and academics goal. Now, so you're going to hear a lot about the learning and academics goal today, but within that goal, there's all these subsets of action steps, categories, and then more finite types of steps that we need to take. So in order to actualize the goal of the strategic plan. So tonight we have a couple of people here to talk about the early literacy strategic goal that is inside that strategic plan. There is a high focus of early literacy, and I believe Emily and Una are here to do that. And then after that, Kristen, I think is next, will introduce the next group.
Hello, everyone. I'm Una Melanson. I teach first grade at Chatham Elementary, and I'm here to talk to you about UFly. The reason why we are doing UFly is because statistically across the country, 40% of all students are showing that they cannot read on a basic level. That's huge. This means that students are showing that they lack the foundational skills involving decoding or sounding out words. We know that the human brain is wired for speech, but our brains are not wired to read. In order to connect speech sounds to their corresponding letter or letter sounds, most people need explicit teaching done in a systematic and sequential way. Currently, the reading programs that we have across the country are lacking in those foundational skills. So we needed to find something to supplement. We decided, after doing a lot of research, to implement UFly, which is an explicit and systematic program that teaches students the foundational skills necessary for proficient reading. UFly stands for University of Florida Literacy Institute. This program is research and evidence-based. The lessons are designed to develop knowledge of sounds of speech and how they link to letters so that students can successfully decode words and write words. The lessons are approximately 30 minutes long, but are broken down into short, multi-sensory drills. You can see from the pictures, those are my kiddos up there, those little pictures, that students are engaged in manipulating hands-on materials, magnetic letters to build words, and then write them on their own individual whiteboards. We explore every aspect of each sound that from how the mouth forms the sound. They have little mirrors that they look into when they're making the sound to see what their mouth is shaped like and where their tongue is and where their tongue is in relation to their teeth, and we have all kinds of very interesting conversations about that. And then we go on and talk about the placement of the letters on the lines and how to form the letters so they're getting every aspect of the letter in relation to the sound, or the letters if it's a team of letters. It's harder to talk in front of grown-ups. I'm used to 6-year-olds. Where was I? The kids are actively engaged in multi-sensory, rigorous practice, but they love it because it's like they're being given the keys to the kingdom. Each lesson culminates with reading a decodable passage. At the end of the week, students are assessed through dictation of words and sentences. They are not only learning to read and spell, but they are learning to read and spell well. But don't take my word for it. Progress is already showing up in our DIBEL scores. In kindergarten, at the beginning of the year, 23% of students were reading at benchmark or above. Now, 64% are reading at benchmark or above. In first grade, at the beginning of the year, 66% were reading at benchmark or above. Now, 79% are at benchmark or above. Almost every grade level is seeing improvement. The other day, a new adult was in my room while the kids were buddy reading. She was amazed. She couldn't believe that each and every student, a couple of days before vacation, was into reading and that they were actually reading so well. She said it was so easy to see that they all felt good about themselves as readers and loved reading. Her observation was validated even more when I rang the bell to clean up, and the kids were visibly disappointed. They didn't want to stop. Assessment scores are great, but to me, seeing my students read well and love reading, that is the best success. And UFly was the key to getting there.
Thank you.
I'm back. So now I'm going to talk about our partnership with Hill for literacy. Just a little bit about Hill. They're a company that works with educators to understand the research and data and translate that into meaningful learning opportunities for not only kids, but our teachers too. So in order to accomplish the implementation of UFly this year, there's been various committees that have been set up throughout the district to support that work. There's been the district leadership, literacy leadership team, as well as UFly coaches with Hill. We've worked to develop the literacy plan that spans all grade levels, and in my personal favorite thing in the coaching role with Hill, we work with the Hill representatives work with teachers or interventionists depending on the building, and I'm a coach in Chatham, and so I get to go with the Hill person to observe my colleagues and how they're implementing Hill in their UFly in their classroom, and it's really cool to get to. There's never time during the day to go into somebody's class and see how they teach something. So it's a great way to see how somebody else might be doing it. Maybe I want to change something and how I'm doing it, or have a conversation of, feedback of maybe you should change this or try this instead. So I think that's really when learning happens for both kids and grown-ups too. Most recently, with The Hill, we've worked with their online platform called Continuum. On the Continuum, we were able to enter and interpret student data regarding literacy instruction and group our students based off of the needs of their instruction. This has been really helpful so that no matter the role of the educator in our school, everybody's on the same page. And so that means that our students are getting exactly what they need to make progress and be successful. Thank you.
We have a goal of supporting student growth in numeracy and mathematical understanding, and as such, we're in the process of a kindergarten through 7th grade high-quality instructional material review, commonly called HQIM, which we've referred to. The goal of this is really to look at instructional materials and make sure they align with our district's vision, our student needs, and evidence-based practices that support deep mathematical understanding. I'm going to hand things over to Principal Kelly. She's going to talk a little bit more about the HQIM process.
And I believe Megan's going to try and again as well.
I mean, they can figure it out. So we had this little flow of
teacher, Harvard.
Oh, they know. We had this flow of the why, and here I'm the why person, and the how. So sorry about that. Sorry. So as I mentioned before, math nerd. So I'm on the 2 math committees. The reason that we even started talking about looking at a new curriculum or a new framework for math is because most of our schools were kind of doing their own little thing. While we did have some technically in place, we had gotten to a point where we're serving our classrooms and not serving the greater good of the district. And as I mentioned before, these kids are coming into middle school, they're not sharing the same language, they're not sharing the same skills. Then they're getting into high school where they have real math to do, and I'm joking. And then they still don't have those foundational skills. And we wanted to make sure that that's not a problem anymore. Additionally, as we have grown through the years, we've learned how important the conceptual understanding is to support fluency and to support that higher math level of thinking. And that, a lot of those skills weren't really in what we were teaching the kids previously. So we started meeting, it was just this year, right? It's only been a year? Wow, it feels a lot longer. So we started meeting this year, and we set the goals of a math framework that focuses on priority standards while encouraging discourse and experiential learning. Not just for the littles, for all the kids, because those middle school kids, those high school kids, experiential learning actually, it's a thing. We also are looking for a program with a built-in Tier 2 or Tier 3 programming to support acceleration or intervention, as well as a formal method of assessment. There are a few other things, but those are the biggies. So now it's Jen's turn. Sorry.
Okay, good evening, Jen Kelly, principal at Chatham Elementary School. So this HQIM committee, we did start our work in the summer, and it's a really large committee, which I think speaks volumes for how important this matter is to our teachers and for our district. Over the summer, we began by talking about what was working in our current practices and where some of our challenges were. Megan alluded to several of them being lack of consistency, taking a program that was outdated and not aligned to the standards, and everyone trying to adjust it to the students in front of them. So we went through that, and then we looked through the hard data. So we took a little bit of quantitative data and we took some qualitative data, and between all of that we figured out where we wanted to move forward. We then began to start the process of looking at different math programs. We looked at several programs and brought it down to about 2 to 3 programs that we really wanted to delve deeper into. Megan said some of the concerns that we had that are top priorities, the things that we would not live without in a new program. One of those also for our elementary schools was a program that was going to align to the math workshop model, which we've done a lot of work with over the last 3 years in the district, and are seeing really positive results from that. So we broke it down to 2 to 3 programs, and in the fall, in October, we started with a program called Reveal Math. We had pilots taking place K through 5. All of Chatham Elementary School teachers have piloted that, and a significant number of the Harwich classrooms have used it as well at all different grade levels. Some teachers chose to do a unit, some did more. We came back and we reviewed, talked about what were the strengths, what were the challenges, what were the opportunities for growth. During this time, we also met to talk, to look at ed reports and outside researchers of what their evaluation of the program was. We decided that our next pilot would be with the program called iReady, which we are currently piloting at all 3 schools, the middle school, Chatham Elementary School, and some of the classrooms at Harwich. We have received professional development from both programs makers. We have access to all the books, all the digital, all the assessment, and we're really trying it out to see what works best using this framework of what we think is most important and where our needs are as a district. So we are currently in that piloting process. It's been really interesting work. I have to say, I have run curriculum reviews like this in the past, and I'm just really impressed by the dedication of our teachers. They are not easily swayed by something that's shiny when you get new products. They try to get you with the flash, and we're really digging into it and asking the hard questions, looking at issues of equity, looking at issues of intervention, differentiation, assessment, long-term projections for student success. All of those things, I think, is really going to make us have a stronger math program across the district and stronger results in our mathematics. So our next steps are finishing these pilots and meeting again to discuss what are the strengths, weaknesses, and what programs best fit our needs. If it's there, I think we have kind of some programs and some ideas of which way we're going. And then it will be the next step of making sure that we can get that across the district and start the hard work of implementing a new program.
Amazing. Thank you.
Okay, so along with those 2 goals, another one of our strategic goals is high-quality instruction. And I love this work. I love all of the work that we do as a team. This is a highlight for me because this is where I get to be with the teachers, with the students in the classroom. We celebrate successes, and I'll let Mr. Walsh tell you about his experience and some of those successes some of which he had today. So come on over, Mr. Walsh.
Hi, everybody. Some of you know me, many of you don't, but my name's Doug Walsh. I teach grades 8 through 12 here at the high school. This year, Lindsay Hooper has been helping me with my teaching in immeasurable ways, and I'm totally sincere when I say that. When I came to realize that my grade 8 lessons needed some fine-tuning, I turned to Lindsay because my interactions with her last year were so positive and helpful. Lindsay agreed to assist me in co-teaching an 8th grade unit on a new novel that we have now. It's called I Want to Be Where You Are. At the beginning of the unit, she taught a few of the lessons on her own, and my observations of these lessons helped me teach the lessons that followed. And in addition to observing Lindsay's lessons, I also engaged in numerous discussions with her that informed my practice positively. When I began teaching lessons for this unit on my own, they became considerably more dynamic and engaging than before. I feel truly blessed to have Lindsay's support. She is an extremely knowledgeable, kind, and positive person, which I'm sure a lot of you know already. I thank you all sincerely for providing me with the opportunity to speak on her behalf. And just one more thing I wanted to say, because this kind of dawned on me after I had already printed up the speech and had it ready to go. She is so good with the kids. She knows them from the middle school, and they remember her, and they have very positive memories, and it's great to see her interacting with them in the classroom and in the hallways here at the high school too. So, thank you, Lindsay.
So that is a snapshot of some of the work, and obviously you hear it directly from the people who are doing the work. The other big part of our jobs is obviously professional development, and all of our professional development over the last couple of years has revolved specifically around the strategic plan, the portrait of the graduate, and all the other needs that we have that is arising, as a district that are rising in our area. If you go to the website, you'll see, there's a large committee that does this work, and two of them are here, but we have designated a differentiated professional development pathway program. And if we're differentiating within our classrooms, we want to be differentiating with our adult teaching as well. So if you go to the website at some time when you're just bored and you have nothing to do, you can click on any of those pathways up there. There's series, there's courses, there's workshops, there's webinars. They're open, and I've told Superintendent Carpenter if they're listed there and somebody requests them, you just say yes and approve them and move them through the system so we can make sure that everybody's doing the interconnected work. So we have Dr. Kelly and also Ms. Gushy here to tell about that programming.
Hi, my name is Cindy Gushy. I'm a resident of Harwich, and I currently work at the middle school in the Shadow Tide programs. And I'm here to talk a little bit about two new programs that we put into place for instructional assistants. One is that every new instructional assistant who's hired in the district gets a mentor for at least 1 year. Also, so if you are hired and you don't have any educational experiences, we are doing an induction program for those instructional assistants. We meet once a month and we go over different areas. This month we're doing active supervision, we've done rules and regulations, job expectations, and it seems to be working well. And I know the assistants that I work with at the elementary school really appreciate the program, and everyone is loving having the fact that they have somebody in the building that they can go to at all 4 schools.
All right, hello again. I'm going to talk a little bit more about just the wider professional development committee. There's educators from all of the schools within the district, and we get together to talk about what would fit the needs of our colleagues and ourselves in moving the district forward. We conduct a survey every year to get feedback from staff on what their needs are, and then not only what their needs are for learning, but how they would like to receive that learning. And I think that's a really important part, because as Dr. Millen said, we all learn in different ways, teachers as well. In November of this year, we had 2 days of PD. The first day was a district-based day where the entire district was here at the high school. We had a keynote speaker that spoke to us about universal design, which was really, it made sure that we all have a common starting point in our understanding of UDL. The second day was a building-based day, which our instructional leaders took on a lot of responsibility. It helped build capacity for our learning leaders and gave our staff time to work on all of the many different projects that we're working on through the course of the year, to have a whole day together to really dig into student data, instructional practices, and planning, which was really a wonderful use of time, and hopefully something that we'll be able to continue in the future. As Dr. Millen mentioned, the Professional Development Committee and the directors have done an amazing job of providing pathways and resources for our staff to follow up in any areas that they need to improve their instruction or their understanding of education and students. And it's just been a real pleasure to be part of this group, and how in tune we are to the needs of our staff so that they can better meet the needs of our students. So thank you.
Before
we wrap up, I want to just provide you a overview on where we are with our Portrait of a Graduate implementation. We're still in the early stages. We've started to align some curriculum work with the POG competencies, starting first at ELA. 6th grade ELA has started that work. We've also started to revise our student recognition systems to better align with the POG values. If you walk out of the building this way, I believe it's still up on the right. You can see the high school, their recent recognition for students. And I want to just give Joy Jordan a shout out for her PR campaign. We have both an internal and external push happening right now. Again, look around, I can see some POG posters in here tonight. So we've got some posters internal. She's done a great job of capturing our students in action and really personifying those competencies, as well as our social media push to raise awareness for the external community and the wider community outside the walls of our school. So the next step in the game is for the implementation team to create common rubrics to really assess and track student growth in these competency areas.
So I just want to thank all the staff members who gave their time tonight, but I also want to just give you a little quick thing. We were doing walkthroughs the other day at the and we went into the PE classrooms, which unfortunately our UAs and our PE and our exploratory sometimes don't see as much of us as some of the content area. And I walked with one of the teachers who did a curriculum task force last year with PE with me, and she's like, you told me about this Portrait of a Graduate that we had to add it to the curriculum cycle, and we started doing it, and she goes, now we're doing it, and it's great. It's just so easy. And I'm like, okay, well, you didn't like me very much in the beginning, but now they're seeing that actually being in that implementation stage where it will become a sustaining practice as we move along. So I thank you for your time. I know that was a lot, but I hope it was worthwhile.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Thank you very much, everybody. That was amazing.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, we'll move on to the first reading of policy files.
Madam Chair, this is a policy that has had quite a bit of addition regarding overall fingerprint-based criminal history. As you can see in the pages, this is added to in terms of DCF requirements and Sex Offender Registry Board, and those are the additions to this document.
Any questions? I'm going to go with no. We'll move right along.
The second from the Policy Committee is in regards to equal educational opportunities, and this is, you'll see in the latter part of the document here, filling in some of the state requirements.
Everybody okay with that? Okay. We'll move along.
The third is non-discrimination policy, which has a lot of the similar language also at the bottom for the state requirements, although they are two distinct policies.
Okay, I think everyone's still reading.
Yeah,
it's a lot. Go ahead.
And the last one is for sexual harassment, Title IX policy, which really which we felt in the Policy Committee really kind of buttons down some of making sure that all particular issues are addressed.
Any questions? We have time to read through that over the next 2 weeks. All right. We'll move on. We are not doing the Massachusetts School Building Association update, so we will move on to the approval of the MRHS Interact Key Club donation to Project Hope.
Middle School Committee, this is just another donation from Student Activity Fund. These two clubs raised money to donate to fires in Los Angeles, to a charity called Project Hope, to support response to those devastating effect of those fires. And it's $670 from the Interact Club and $330 from the Key Club, and they raised money from a breakfast they put on for staff as well as existing funds that they had available. So just looking for your approval for them to make that donation.
Jackie, go ahead.
I'd like to approve the donation of $1,000 to Project Hope raised by the Monomoy Regional High School Interact and Key Club.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion passes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is the middle school restoration project update.
I took your thunder earlier, you can have this thunder. You can have the cost.
So we met this week, and as we are quickly approaching town meeting season, we're trying to iron out exactly what this project is going to cost. And we had the architect there and the project manager there, and so they were filling us in on the different possibilities. We actually are going to meet in 2 weeks and they're going to come back with actual numbers and comparisons so that we can think about that. Last week, there was some air quality tests done that mostly came back in the positive. There was a few
Good
that...
positive.
Good positive.
Not mold positive.
Oh, right, good positive.
Good positive.
I'm going to pass the mic.
So in terms of the indoor air quality, this idea, it came up at the school committee meeting. We have undergone a process where every 2-3 weeks we are testing a quarter of the spaces in the middle school. So we went around quite literally about every fourth classroom or office all around the building and tested the air, did outside tests, and then also as sort of an added control, we, with the town's blessing, went and tested 3 buildings in each town. So we did the children's section in each library in each town. We did a meeting room in each of the community centers in the town, and we did the select board room in each of the towns. And we did our library in this library and each library in our school district, and a classroom as far away from the library as you could get in each one of the classrooms. Long and short, of the 23 classrooms we tested at the middle school, the classrooms were well within those ranges of what was outside. In fact, most of those 20 were actually significantly below the outside mold levels, and well in line with any of the other town buildings that we sampled. There were 3 spaces that were high, so we'll be digging into what might have made them high. The first of those was an art room at the high school. I've had a conversation with the building principal, who's had a conversation with the art teacher, who's reached out to me, that there'll be a thorough room cleaning that I think might help, and we'll also be going into that space.
Is it the middle school?
At the middle school.
Middle school.
Oh, middle school.
Okay.
Yeah, so we'll be focusing on cleaning and that room. Our Slim Jim also pinged high. It's entirely possible that what's going on in the Slim Jim could be 2 factors. One, there's a ducted system in that I suspect has not been sort of like Stanley steamer cleaned out for 27 years since the building was built. So it'll be getting a good cleaning of the ductwork. Also, adjacent to that Slim Jim are 2 locker rooms that haven't been used for 10 years. So you can imagine if you don't use a locker room for 10 years, there are toilets when they were going in that actually have had the water has just dried out. So you can imagine if the toilet's dried out. So there may be some reasons why that Slim Jim has come back. So we need to kind of run some water and address these mothballed locker rooms, do the duct cleaning, and so those were a little higher than what you'd want. Hopefully, what we'll be mitigating over next week will bring those numbers down. The one that was quite concerning is the library pinged way higher. I mean, it was just out of the norm. In hindsight, it turns out where we were sampling, or the company sampled dead center in between 2 bookshelves at the center of the room. There were books, if people remember, there were books along a wall when we closed the library that had gotten wet. Those books were on top waiting to be disposed of, and they were about 1.5 feet away from what we were sampling. So the books with mold have been thrown away. We also think, I had the company do sort of a thorough investigation of the library. I think the library also I think we have to get better on how we deal with spaces that are air conditioned. So our library is air conditioned in the summertime. We have had the air conditioning on in the library, and at times doors open into the hallway, which creates a situation where you've got moist humid air coming in from the hallway, hitting cold air in the library, and it has to go somewhere. So the company was pointing out that there's some woodwork in the library, particularly closest to the doorways, that has a type of fungus or a type of mold that would grow on wood. That again, I think it's going to need. So we are going to be cleaning the ducts in that room. The moldy books have been thrown away. We'll clean the ducts in the room and have to do a thorough cleaning of the woodwork, and hopefully see those numbers come down. So I've told people that I closed the library this week because of that high number, out of an abundance of caution, and we'll reopen it when we get a test back that shows that the numbers are back where they should be. So we had the company back in today to do that every 2-3 weeks. So they did a sampling of the next quarter of the middle school. We'll have those results back over break. They did test the library again and those other, the art room and the Slim Jim, but I don't anticipate those are going to be significantly dropped down yet, because we have mitigation that's going to be going on this week, but we'll at least get a feeling for getting rid of the books in the library, the moldy books that were stacked up in the library. Does that start dropping these numbers in the right direction quickly? So, more to come, but I joke that my days sometimes begin and end with conversations about mold.
They also provided, which I liked, it's a visual, like the footprint of the middle school, and they actually took the old part of the middle school that's 1960, and they pulled it out and put it separate, and they showed us where they did infrared testing all around the outside, and what that looks like, and they really zoomed in on one and explained to us all the colors and everything, and they really, it's a very big picture of multiple strategic points where they're testing for moisture in the walls. And one of the areas that was missing was the Slim Jim. I don't remember the reason why they didn't do that corner, but now that we found out about that. What?
There were kids there.
Oh, that's right, there were kids in the gym. I couldn't do it. That's what it was, thank you. But now that specifically the test came, the air quality test came back, they're going to go back and do that area anyway. So that would be great. It really is a very conclusive report of what we're looking at, and it's really helping our committee kind of determine the depth of work that we're looking for. And I believe also we had to move our meeting up to try and move things along, but also they're going to be giving us some renderings, which will be nice because we've been talking about materials and things like that. So some renderings of what we've discussed.
And then Tuesday of next week, so what Jackie was talking about, these infrared images that they have taken throughout the building. If you're inside the building looking through an infrared camera at a wall, you can see the studs. You can see the space in between the studs, and if that space has a blue color, a darker, colder color, it's an indication of one of two things. Either air is kind of getting in through a crack and creating that cold zone, or potentially the wall is moist in that area. So anywhere where they have a cool wall, they'll be coming in on Tuesday, and they'll be boring through with a 4-inch hole saw and pulling out the drywall, and they'll be investigating to see what is the quality of the interior wall in those spots. Is it, has moisture come all the way in, or is that moisture, further out, or was it just draft that is in and not moisture? So, so that'll be happening in, I think, 45, 50 places across the middle school on Tuesday.
That's amazing.
I just have a quick question on those locker rooms. So they've been closed off for like 10 years?
Oh, yeah.
Well, why? I mean, nobody goes in and cleans them and...
Well, nobody's using them.
So somebody said, we should test the...
The doors are locked, but still,
Yeah.
just because they're locked, they're still inside the building.
So what do the middle school teams use then?
Well, there's locker rooms, there are locker rooms that the teams use off of the big gym.
In the big gym, there's
Okay.
locker room.
All right. Is there just not a need to have both sets?
Right, there's not a need for 2 sets of locker rooms, so
They're
there's,
just closed off, locked, okay.
and repurposing, you can imagine that we haven't had a space need. It would be rather expensive to repurpose a locker room space.
And I think the only other thing we kind of talked about that the committee would be interested in is, given the results of the tests, we're kind of in a position where I think we feel good about where we're at and that we're taking proactive steps for the school. And we did very openly talk about, but the weather's only going to get warmer, more damp, and we're just going to have to continue to do things case by case. And if there are rooms that we need to identify, close off, or shift someone, that we're going to continue to do that until the work starts. So, but we've got a base now, which is really important. So that's in the forefront. Like we're anticipating, being prepared to do what we need to do.
And just as a point of information, I think it came up at this table that there was a want to get the health directors involved in those reports. So Michael and I, before we did anything with the mold analysis, he and I presented the findings to the health directors in each town in a conference Zoom, and just walked them through, this is what we're seeing as the results, and shared with them, here are the 2 spaces that were higher than others, and that the library was significantly off the charts compared to the others. I'm going to be closing it. This is why. So they concurred that that was the best plan of action. So we'll be doing the same thing with this round of data, just working with health directors and walking them through, so they're part of that process.
Great. All right.
Anything else? That's a lot. Superintendent evaluation update.
Sure. The Superintendent Evaluation Committee met this evening, and we went over Dr. Carpenter's goals, and he gave us an update on the status of each of those goals, so we're good to continue on.
Excellent. Thank you. Sure. Superintendent's report.
A few things. First, February 15th is National School Resource Officer Appreciation Day, so I'd like to take a moment to thank Bill Massey and Tom Clark, and of course Fritz the high school dog, who are great at building relationships with our students and great community partners. Also, congratulations to the high school robotics team and advisors Larry, Susan, Rich Oldak for putting together and hosting a great tournament Saturday, February 1st at the high school. The tournament included 23 teams from across Massachusetts. It was a full day of innovation, creativity, and problem solving. Congrats to all that were involved in that. Last year, our team produced a series of videos to encourage students to take computer classes, sharing the benefits of problem-solving skills learned and career opportunities in the field. This grant-funded project was produced by Joy Jordan, Robin Millen, Rich Olbeck, and was created in conjunction with Chris Seifert of Mooncusser Films. The project was recently honored by the AVA Digital Awards in the Best Education Video category. AVA is an international competition that recognizes excellence by creative professionals responsible for planning, concept, direction, design, and production of digital communications. Congratulations. Those videos can be found on our website under the curriculum section. We'd like to thank Marlene Clapp and the Outermost Toastmasters Club of Wellfleet for the donation of $175 to the middle school in memory of Jeff Nilsson. The donation will be used towards the purchase of books for ELA readers. Lastly, we'd like to thank the Garden Club of Harwich for their grant in the amount of $4,000 to Live Hoss at HES. And then to just share with the committee a week in the life of the superintendent. So the highs and lows. So for me, I think one of the great highs a week ago, I get this email from Christy Catone at Harwich Elementary School, and Elson Joy, Scott, you need to come over. Some students have something they want to pitch to you. The students found out that their superintendent is a rabid Eagles fan, and the fourth grade ambassadors at Harwich Elementary School pitched to me. They had PowerPoints, they had surveys, they had posters, they had videos of their pitch on why Monomoy should be closed for the day following the Super Bowl. They did not appreciate when I told them that the last time the Eagles played the Patriots in the Super Bowl, Philadelphia schools had a late start, the Philadelphia schools didn't have a late start. They had a regular time start, and the Eagles won and beat the Patriots. I was very happy. I was almost kicked out of a Super Bowl party that year. But the following, when the Eagles played the Chiefs last in the Super Bowl, Philadelphia schools did go have a late start, and the Eagles lost. So I'm like, I cannot jinx this. We're going to be opening on time. I was a little worried that Mother Nature was going to throw a wrench in that. But I did come up with a compromise for the students. I said, if you do learn the Eagles fight cheer and the Eagles win, I will be cooking cheesesteaks for the fourth graders. So I will be making good on that promise next week, and I will be cooking a special cheesesteak lunch for the fourth graders. That's awesome. And finally getting in touch with my want to be a short order chef. Second, and this is really a compliment to Michael McMillan. So when I started here, I was the one that gave every one of the budget, the budget hearings. Like, I was always pitching the budget. But when you have a business manager that's so great and competent, it's nice to be in a different role. So if we kind of take it back to the Super Bowl, I feel like Michael has become the Kevin Bernhardt doing the play-by-play, and I have adopted the Tom Brady analyst role. So in the last 2 days, we were at the selectmen meeting, and Michael was giving the budget presentation, and I was like Tom Brady's chiming in now and then, earlier today, we were at the Chatham FinComp doing that same thing. So while Tom Brady's never been my hero, I feel like I've become a little Tom Brady lately. Third, we met yesterday evening with our diversity council, who are steering our equity audit with the Mid-Atlantic Equity Consortium that we're working with. they came up with a request, and I just want to put it out here, and I'll work with the chair and vice chair, hopefully to make this happen, but we have building level teams that will be getting some training to begin this equity audit process soon after we come back after February vacation. And it kind of came up in this conversation of the Diversity Council, why don't we have the school committee be one of the groups who actually does that same, uses that same audit tool and takes some time to kind of reflect together on how we are from your vantage point, living up to our equity goals. So I'll work with the chair and vice chair, and I'd like to invite this group to be part of that training. And the way it works with our building teams is they, at the end of being trained and sort of using the tool and running through it themselves, they come together for a consensus building sort of long meeting, which I think might be well done as a workshop. Again, sort of adding a workshop onto our calendar that's currently not there, but I think it would be great. And again, it came from the table at the Diversity Council that they think that if each of the buildings are doing it, it would be great if our school committee was actually involved in this too. And it is, of course, one of your goals. Let's see. Number 4, I had a great time a couple days ago with Dr. Millen, Jen Police, and Abby Dudley, and Kristen Callahan and Lindsay Hooper. We went on a visit to 2 high schools in Rhode Island who have sort of good examples of CTE programs and career paths in schools that are actually even smaller than ours, to go and look at how can a small school actually put those in place, and also looked at senior projects that are very much done in each one of these schools tied to their portrait of the graduate. So it was a chance to kind of see some other schools and how they do those. These are 2 schools that I've done NEASC visits at that I thought had some exemplary practices we could learn from, so that was great. And then just to thank Jen Police and Joy. Early this morning, my phone was going off with some text from Tom Clark about a threat that was directed on teenage student conversations online. So we kind of quickly, with Joy's support and Jen, we were able to kind of communicate out to families, just that there was a threat, and that I really appreciate Harwich Police support in addressing it. But more than anything, I appreciate the students who came forward to go, first of all, let us know that there was conversation out there that was concerning online, and 2, the ones that came forward to go help identify and help have the police go and address who, so it's, we know who made the statements. They're not part of our school community. They've been identified. It's been resolved. We put something out to families, but it's one of those things that you never know what's going to happen in the week with school superintendent, in addition to dealing with mold.
Thank you, Scott. Great. The last thing is our second reading for policy file IFK, competency determination graduation requirement.
Madam Chair, I move that the competency determination graduation requirement as outlined in file IFK be approved.
Wait a second?
Second.
Any questions? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Passes. On the presentation of the warrants, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? 8:45.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Good night.